Some paintings become famous, but others define history. They transcend the canvas, shaping culture, sparking revolutions, and leaving us with mysteries that remain unsolved centuries later. From stolen masterpieces to hidden symbols, each painting on this list isn't just famous. It tells a story, one that continues to evolve even today. But choosing just 20? Nearly impossible. Art is deeply personal, and what's considered the most famous depends on perspective, influence, and sometimes controversy. While this list features some of the most iconic paintings ever created, there are many others just as deserving of recognition. Maybe this is just the first of many. Let's begin. Impression Sunrise. This is the painting that gave Impressionism its name, and it wasn't meant as a compliment. When Monet exhibited Impression, Sunrise in 1874, a critic mocked its loose, fleeting brushstrokes, scoffing that it was merely an impression rather than a finished work. But what was meant as an insult became the identity of an artistic revolution. Unlike traditional landscapes that sought precision and detail, Monet's focus was light and color in motion. The hazy, dreamlike port of Le Havre, his hometown, is captured at dawn with quick, fluid strokes. The orange sun and its shimmering reflection break through the mist, contrasted it against the muted blues and grays. Instead of hard edges, Monet leaves the scene open to interpretation, just as we experience a sunrise in real life. Fleeting, changing, ephemeral. The influence of photography and Japanese art is evident. Like a snapshot, the composition captures a moment in time rather than a carefully staged scene. The colors and forms dissolve at the edges, forcing the viewer to complete the image in their mind. Despite its early ridicule Impression, Sunrise became the symbol of a movement. It challenged conventions, inviting artists to break free from rigid academic rules and paint what they felt, not just what they saw. Today, its boldness is undeniable, a revolution in a single brushstroke. The creation of Adam. Two hands, inches apart, frozen in time. It is one of the most reproduced, reinterpreted, and analyzed images in Western art. Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, painted on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, is more than just a religious scene. It's a meditation on life, consciousness, and humanity's relationship with the divine. At first glance, it appears simple. God, surrounded by a billowing cloak of angels, extends his hand toward Adam, who reclines in an almost lethargic pose. But the near touch between their fingers is electric, a visual metaphor for the transfer of a life itself. This moment, the instant before the divine spark, is what makes the painting so powerful. Yet there's another layer to Michelangelo's genius. Many scholars believe the shape surrounding God resembles the human brain, suggesting that Michelangelo, deeply familiar with anatomy, embedded a hidden message. Could it mean that God is not only granting Adam life, but also intellect, consciousness, and the divine gift of reason? Others interpret it as a womb, reinforcing the idea of creation in a biological sense. Whether it represents divine power, human potential, or both, the creation of Adam transcends its religious roots. Its imagery has become universal, adapted in countless ways, from pop culture references to philosophical debates. Michelangelo didn't just paint a biblical moment, he captured the essence of what it means to be human, forever reaching, forever questioning, forever seeking that spark of something greater. Mona Lisa. It's the most famous painting in the world, yet it's neither signed nor dated. The Mona Lisa has captivated art lovers for centuries, not just because of her enigmatic smile, but because of the countless mysteries hidden within its brushstrokes. Painted by Leonardo da Vinci between 1503 and 1506, or was it later, Leonardo was known for his endless revisions, and some believe he continued working on it for another 2 decades. The portrait, officially titled La Gioconda, was commissioned by a Florentine merchant, yet for some reason Leonardo never delivered it. Instead, he took it with him to France, where it eventually became part of King Francis I's collection. But despite its unmatched fame today, Mona Lisa wasn't always the superstar of the art world. For centuries it was admired, but not iconic. That changed in 1911, when it was stolen from the Louvre by an Italian handyman who believed he was returning it to Italy. The heist turned the painting into a media sensation, and from that moment on it became the most recognized portrait in history. Beyond the theft, the painting itself is filled with subtle but strange details. Her missing eyebrows, once there but possibly eroded with time, The surreal background with an intentionally imbalanced horizon, and Leonardo's mastery of sfumato, blending tones so smoothly that her face seems to emerge from shadow. But perhaps its greatest mystery? That smile? Leonardo hired musicians to entertain Mona Lisa's sitter, which might explain her fleeting expression. Or maybe, like the painting itself, it was never meant to be fully understood. The Arnolfini portrait. It's probably one of the most enigmatic works of the Northern Renaissance. A meticulously detailed image that appears simple at first glance, but reveals layers of symbolism the closer you look. At its center is a wealthy couple, Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini and his wife. But what exactly is happening here? Is this a wedding, a betrothal, or something else entirely? Scholars have debated it for centuries. Some believe it commemorates a marriage, with Giovanni raising his right hand in a gesture of oath-taking, while others argue it's a memorial portrait of a wife who had already passed away. Every object in the room seems to hold a deeper meaning. The small dog at their feet symbolizes fidelity, the cast-aside shoes suggest a sacred event, and the mirror behind them reveals two figures, one likely Van Eyck himself, witnessing the moment. Above it, the inscription reads, Johannes de Eyck fuit hic, Jan van Eyck was here, as if he's leaving his signature not just as an artist, but as a participant in the scene. Beyond its symbolism, the painting is a technical marvel. Van Eyck's use of oil paint creates an almost photographic realism, from the shimmering reflections in the mirror to the delicate textures of the couple's clothing. It was groundbreaking in its time, a portrait not just of people, but of a moment, preserved like a still frame in history. But perhaps its greatest mystery is that we don't truly know what moment it's capturing. A wedding? A contract? A memory? Like the convex mirror at its heart, the Arnolfini portrait reflects more than just its subjects. It reflects centuries of intrigue and interpretation. The Birth of Venus. It's a vision of beauty so perfect it feels like a dream. The Birth of Venus isn't just a painting, it's a fantasy. A world where myth and reality blur into something almost untouchable. Botticelli's masterpiece depicts Venus, the goddess of love, arriving on the shores of Cyprus, born from the sea foam. But unlike the statuesque figures of the High Renaissance, she is impossibly weightless. Her body elongates, her golden hair cascades like liquid silk, and the entire scene seems to float, as if it exists outside of time itself. What makes the Birth of Venus so unique isn't just its beauty, it's the way it feels. The soft pastel tones, the delicate lines, the way the wind carries Venus to shore. It's not painted for realism, but for emotion. Botticelli wasn't trying to mimic nature, he was crafting a poetic ideal, an image that embodies grace, love, and the very essence of the Renaissance. And yet, beneath its elegance, it was radical. A nude woman as the centerpiece of a monumental painting? That was rare, unless it was biblical. But Venus wasn't Eve, and this wasn't a story of shame. It was a celebration. A rebirth, not just of Venus, but of art itself. Centuries later, it remains one of the most iconic images in history, because while beauty fades, the birth of Venus is eternal. The Great Wave off Kanagawa. It's one of the most reproduced images in the world, yet it's neither a painting nor a singular masterpiece. The Great Wave off Kanagawa is a woodblock print, one of thousands, yet it has become the definitive symbol of Japanese art. Why? Because Hokusai didn't just depict a wave, he captured the raw, untamed force of nature itself. At first glance, it's an image of chaos. A monstrous wave curls like a claw, ready to swallow the tiny fishing boats below. The fishermen, faceless and nameless, brace for impact, their fate uncertain. In contrast, Mount Fuji, Japan's eternal symbol, stands still and serene in the background, unshaken by the turmoil around it. This juxtaposition, movement versus stillness, power versus permanence, is what gives the Great Wave its enduring tension. But beyond its striking composition, the print reflects Japan's deeper relationship with nature. It embodies the idea of furyu, the appreciation of fleeting beauty, and mano no aware, a sensitivity to the impermanence of life. Hokusai's print isn't just about a wave, it's about time, change, and human resilience in the face of forces beyond our control. Western audiences were captivated by its bold asymmetry and dynamic energy. When Japan opened its borders in the late 19th century, the Great Wave heavily influenced Impressionist and Post-Impressionist artists like Monet and Van Gogh. Today, it remains a universal image, found everywhere from album covers to emojis. a reminder that no matter how powerful the wave, life continues beyond it. At first glance, the Night Watch is pure chaos. Figures in motion, light clashing with shadow, an explosion of movement frozen in oil and canvas. But look closer, and you'll see why this painting revolutionized portraiture, officially titled Militia Company of District 2 under the command of Captain Frans Banninck Koch. This was meant to be a straightforward group portrait of a Dutch militia, but Rembrandt had no interest in stiff, static arrangements. Instead, he staged it like a theatrical production, officers stepping forward, a little girl glowing in the shadows, soldiers caught mid-stride, some barely visible. Light doesn't simply illuminate, it directs the eye, giving each figure a unique presence. The result? A masterpiece that turned a routine commission into a legendary work of art. But the Night Watch wasn't just radical, it was controversial. Many of the paying subjects weren't happy with their diminished roles, and its dynamic, off-balance composition challenged expectations. Over the centuries, the painting suffered damage, was trimmed to fit a new location, cutting out key figures, and even survived an attack by a knife-wielding vandal. Yet despite all this, the Night Watch endures. It remains one of the most famous paintings in the world, proof that art isn't about simply recording reality, it's about reshaping it. Las Meninas. At first glance, Las Meninas seems like a straightforward royal portrait, but the deeper you look, the more it challenges your perception. Velázquez creates an intricate visual puzzle, one that places both the viewers and the artist inside the scene. The painting centers on the Infanta Margarita, surrounded by her ladies-in-waiting, a court dwarf, and a massive dog. To the left, Velázquez himself stands at an easel, gazing directly at us. But what is he painting? The answer lies in the mirror at the back of the room, where the reflections of King Philip IV and Queen Mariana appear. Are they the true subjects of this portrait? If so, are we standing in their place, seeing the scene from their eyes? The mastery of perspective in Las Meninas is unmatched. Every glance, shadow, and placement of figures deepens the mystery, transforming the painting into a study of power, observation, and the role of the artist. Even the brush strokes feel deliberate yet alive, capturing a fleeting moment with astonishing realism. This isn't just a court painting, it's Velázquez asserting the artist's place in history. The Order of Santiago cross on his chest was added later, after he was knighted, solidifying his elevation beyond mere craftsmanship. A painting that invites endless interpretation, Las Meninas remains one of the greatest artistic enigmas of all time, where the observer becomes the observed. Whistler's Mother. A mother's portrait? Not quite. Whistler's Mother is one of the most famous paintings in American art, but James McNeill. Whistler had no intention of creating a sentimental tribute. His real focus: shape, tone, and composition, not his mother's personality. Originally, the model for the painting didn't show up, so Whistler asked his mother, Anna, to sit in. The result is a stark, almost abstract arrangement of black and gray, a study in restraint that defied the ornate Victorian portraits of the time. But that didn't stop the world from reading into it. Over time, the painting became an unexpected icon. It has been celebrated as a symbol of motherhood, stamped on U.S. postage for Mother's Day, and even parodied in pop culture. But Whistler himself rejected all of that sentimentality. He famously said, "To me, it is interesting as a picture of my mother, but what can or ought the public to care about the identity of the portrait? Yet here we are, still talking about her." Maybe Whistler's genius wasn't just in the composition. It was in creating an image so universal, so quietly powerful, that it refuses to be ignored. The 3rd of May, 1808. There are paintings of war, and then there is the 3rd of May, 1808, a visceral, unflinching depiction of brutality that shattered the conventions of historical art. Goya created this masterpiece to commemorate the Spanish resistance against Napoleon's troops. Yet this is no glorified battle scene. There are no heroes here, only victims and executioners. At the center, a lone figure in white raises his arms in a desperate, Christ-like gesture. The light of a lantern illuminates him, revealing marks on his palms reminiscent of stigmata, subtle yet symbolic of martyrdom. But this is not a painting of salvation. To the right, the faceless mechanical firing squad takes aim, an emotionless force of destruction. At their feet, the lifeless bodies of previous victims foreshadow the inevitable. Goya painted this work years after the event, when Spain's fleeting hope for reform had crumbled. Was this only a condemnation of foreign invaders, or a bitter reflection on the cost of all war? The raw emotion, the stark contrast of light and shadow, and the sheer terror on the victims' faces make this painting feel as urgent now as it did 2 centuries ago. For a deeper dive into Goya's genius, check out our special episode where we explore the 3rd of May, 1808 in more detail. Liberty leading the people. A woman, barefoot and unbowed, charges forward with the tricolor flag in one hand and a musket in the other. She is both myth and reality, an allegory of revolution, but as flesh and blood as the men who fight beside her. Liberty leading the people is not just a painting, it's a battle cry, an image of defiance and hope that still resonates nearly 2 centuries after it was created. Painted in response to the July Revolution of 1830, Delacroix's masterpiece captures the chaos and energy of a people rising against oppression. Unlike traditional historical paintings that often idealize war, Liberty leading the people is raw and unfiltered. The bodies of the fallen litter the ground, their deaths a stark reminder of the cost of freedom. The figures, a mix of social classes, reflect the revolution's democratic spirit, from the young boy wielding pistols, who may have inspired Les Miserables Gavroche, to the laborer in a workman's cap standing alongside the bourgeois intellectual. Delacroix, a romantic painter, infused the scene with movement, light, and deep emotion. The colors, dominated by the red, white, and blue of the French flag, are not just symbolic, they pulse with urgency. Liberty herself, modeled on classical goddesses but given a real-world grit, embodies both the ideals and the struggle of revolution. More than a national symbol, Liberty leading the people has inspired movements across the world. Its influence can even be seen in the Statue of Liberty, a different yet equally powerful beacon of freedom. But where Lady Liberty stands serene and welcoming, Delacroix's Liberty is in motion, leading, demanding, fighting, a reminder that freedom is never simply given, it is taken. Girl with a pearl earring. It's been called the Mona Lisa of the North, but unlike Da Vinci's masterpiece, Vermeer's girl with a pearl earring isn't a portrait of nobility. In fact, we don't even know who she is. This isn't a commissioned portrait, it's a trony, a study of an imagined figure. But that's exactly what makes it so captivating. Her gaze feels personal, almost too intimate, as if she's about to whisper a secret that only we can hear. And then, of course, there's the pearl, a single luminous detail that draws the eye, reflecting the same soft glow as her lips and eyes, forming an invisible triangle that locks in our attention. Vermeer's mastery of light is almost unnatural. He layered pigments, lapis lazuli under warm tones, to create an effect that makes the painting seem to glow from within. The turban, the golden highlights, and the deep shadowed background all heighten the sense of mystery, making her feel like she exists between 2 worlds, frozen in time yet somehow alive. American Gothic. It's a painting so famous it feels almost like a meme. Yet American Gothic is anything but simple. With its stern-faced farmer and his daughter, or wife, standing stiffly in front of their Gothic-style farmhouse, Grant Wood created one of the most analyzed paintings in American history. But what does it really mean? Painted during the Great Depression, this piece has been both a celebration and a critique of rural America. The subjects, modeled after Wood's sister and his dentist, seem stoic, hardened by life, yet almost theatrical in their rigidity. The pitchfork, echoed in the farmer's overalls and even his sharp facial structure, reinforces the severity of the scene. But is it admiration or satire? Wood never clarified. Some saw it as a tribute to Midwestern resilience, while others interpreted it as a mockery of outdated conservatism. And its mysterious tension between pride and parody is what keeps us coming back. Today, American Gothic is a cultural icon, endlessly parodied and reimagined, but behind the humor, it remains an eerie, frozen moment in time, one that still challenges us to question what we think we see. Sunflowers. They're just flowers. Or are they? Sunflowers isn't just one painting, it's a series, a self-made signature, and an obsession. Vincent van Gogh painted them in the blazing heat of Arles, pouring his passion and turmoil into petals that seem to twist with life. At first glance, they're vibrant, radiant, even joyful. But look closer. The blooms are at different stages, from fresh and open to wilted and curling. Life and death, growth and decay, all captured in thick, swirling strokes. Van Gogh wasn't just painting flowers, he was capturing time itself. He planned these for his yellow house, a space he dreamed of turning into an artist's retreat with Paul Gauguin. But reality didn't match the vision. Their friendship fractured, the retreat fell apart, and Van Gogh's mental state unraveled. The sunflowers remained, silent witnesses to both hope and heartbreak. And yet, even in his darkest moments, Van Gogh saw beauty in the ordinary. His sunflowers don't just sit in a vase, they burn on the canvas, pulsing with raw emotion. Maybe that's why they're unforgettable. They aren't just still lifes, they're self-portraits in disguise. The Starry Night. A swirling sky, a restless landscape, and a universe that seems alive. The Starry Night is more than a painting, it's a vision. Painted in 1889, this masterpiece was created from inside an asylum where Vincent van Gogh observed the night from his window in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. But what he saw wasn't just a literal landscape, it was an emotional one. The motion of the sky, the unearthly glow of the stars, the village lying in stillness below, it all feels like an unspoken battle between turmoil and tranquility. Some believe it reflects Van Gogh's inner struggles, his mind trapped in chaos while longing for peace. Others argue it shows something deeper, his ability to see the universal movement of energy, long before scientists would describe turbulence and cosmic motion in the same way. But what makes the Starry Night so captivating? Is it the colors laid side by side, demanding that our minds blend them together? The patterns radiating outward like ripples in space? Or is it something more? A window into the way Van Gogh saw the world, not as it was, but as it felt. He once wrote to his brother Theo asking, "Why should the spots of light in the firmament be less accessible to us than the black spots on a map? Just as we take a train to go to Rouen, we take death to go to a star." Maybe that's what the Starry Night truly is. A journey, not just through space, but into eternity. The Scream. Few paintings capture the raw intensity of human emotion like The Scream. It's not just a painting. It's a feeling, a cry of existential dread that has echoed through time. Painted by Edvard Munch in 1893, it has become a universal symbol of anxiety, fear, and modern alienation. Munch himself described its creation in almost poetic terms. "I was walking down the road with two friends when the sun set. Suddenly the sky turned as red as blood. I felt a great infinite scream pass through nature. That moment, that overwhelming sense of terror and helplessness is what he poured onto the canvas. But the scream is more than just personal anguish. It reflects a world in turmoil, created at the dawn of the 20th century, a time of rapid industrialization and uncertainty. Its swirling sky and distorted forms seem to suggest that even nature itself is screaming. Some even interpret the figure not as the one screaming, but as someone covering their ears, unable to escape the sound. It's an image so powerful it transcended the art world. From films to advertising, pop culture to fashion, the scream became as recognizable as the Mona Lisa. But with fame came chaos. It was stolen not once, but twice. First in 1994, and again in 2004. Each time its disappearance made international headlines, only reinforcing its legendary status. The persistence of memory. At just 9.5 by 13 inches, the persistence of memory is smaller than a sheet of paper, yet it looms large in the history of art. Surreal, unsettling, and instantly recognizable, it is one of Salvador Dali's most famous works, and a defining image of the Surrealist movement. At its heart, the painting is a meditation on time, its fluidity, its distortion, its unreliability. The melting clocks, soft and limp, defy logic. Time is no longer rigid, no longer a force that governs reality. Instead, it bends, dissolves, and submits to the dream world. The barren landscape, inspired by Dali's native Catalonia, feels timeless, frozen in an eerie stillness. A strange, fleshy figure, part self-portrait, part dream entity, lies limp in the foreground, trapped in sleep or perhaps in the slow decay of memory itself. But why does the persistence of memory resonate so deeply? Beyond its dreamlike imagery, it speaks to something universal, the fleeting nature of existence, the way moments slip through our fingers, how memories distort with time. Dali himself claimed the inspiration came from seeing Camembert cheese melt in the sun, but the painting's impact reaches far beyond such a simple origin. Like all great art, it refuses to offer a single answer. Is it about time, dreams, death, reality? It depends on who's looking, and that perhaps is why it continues to endure. Guernica. It is one of the most haunting images of war ever created, a painting that doesn't show the battlefield, but instead the terror, pain, and destruction left behind. Guernica, painted by Pablo Picasso in 1937, was born from a moment of horror. The bombing of a small town in Spain by Nazi warplanes, an attack that killed civilians and reduced Guernica to rubble. At first, Picasso wasn't even interested in painting it. The Spanish Republican government had commissioned him for a mural for the World's Fair in Paris, and for months he had no clear direction. Then the bombing happened and everything changed. In just 35 days, he created a massive 11.5 by 26.5 foot masterpiece, a brutal monochrome vision of suffering, destruction, and despair. But Guernica is unsettling for a reason. The figures are twisted and broken, their mouths frozen in silent screams. There is no color, only black, white, and gray, offering no relief, only a sense of hopelessness. The horse, speared through its side, writhes in agony. The mother, clutching her dead child, wails in grief. The flames, the dismembered bodies, the vacant eyes. It's chaos, and yet it's structured, forcing the viewer to feel the inhumanity of war. And Guernica didn't stay silent. After the World's Fair, it went on a global tour, turning Picasso into an anti-war icon and spreading the painting's message across the world. During World War II, when a Nazi officer saw a reproduction of it in Picasso's studio, he reportedly asked, "Did you do this?" Picasso coldly replied, "No, you did." It wasn't until 1981, after decades of exile in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, that Guernica finally returned to Spain. Today, it remains a timeless warning, a visual scream against war that still echoes through history. The Garden of Earthly Delights. A surreal vision centuries ahead of its time, the Garden of Earthly Delights is a triptych unlike any other. On the left, the biblical Garden of Eden seems peaceful, yet strange creatures hint at something darker. In the central panel, humanity indulges in bizarre pleasures, frolicking naked, feasting on giant fruit, and engaging in surreal, otherworldly activities. Is it paradise, or a warning of excess? Then comes the nightmare. The right panel descends into Bosch's hell, where sinners face grotesque punishments, devoured by monstrous creatures, tormented by demonic musicians, and trapped in surreal tortures. It's a world of chaos and judgment, a stark contrast to the pleasure that came before. But what does it mean? Some see it as a moral warning, others as a philosophical meditation on a human folly. What's certain is that Bosch's masterpiece defies easy explanation. Centuries before surrealism, he painted a fever dream of temptation and consequence, one that still fascinates, disturbs, and invites endless interpretation. The Last Supper. It's one of the most analyzed and mysterious paintings in history. The Last Supper, painted by Leonardo da Vinci between 1495 and 1498, captures the moment Jesus reveals that one of his disciples will betray him. Unlike traditional religious paintings, the Last Supper unfolds like a cinematic sequence. Each disciple reacts differently, some in shock, others in anger, and Judas, clutching his silver, recoiling in the shadows. The tension is palpable. Leonardo's mastery of perspective enhances the drama. All lines converge at Jesus' head, subtly drawing the viewer's focus. But from the dining hall below, the perspective shifts, creating an illusion of space beyond the painting, a detail that adds a sense of spiritual elevation. Then there are the hidden details. Jesus forming an equilateral triangle, the three windows behind him symbolizing the Holy Trinity, and the disciples grouped in sets of three. Even Judas's tilted head foreshadows his fate, mirroring how he would later hang himself. But perhaps the greatest irony? The Last Supper was never meant to last. Instead of using traditional fresco techniques, Leonardo experimented with dry plaster, leading to centuries of deterioration. Today, it's fragile, preserved, but fading. A masterpiece caught between immortality and decay. Some paintings demand attention, others demand conversation. So, after exploring some of the most iconic masterpieces in history, which one left the biggest impression on you? Was it the quiet power of Lena Whistler's mother, the revolutionary energy of liberty leading the people, or the mind-bending genius of Las Meninas? And let's be honest, did I miss one? Art isn't just about what's celebrated, but what resonates. If there's a painting you think deserves a place in this lineup, drop it in the comments. I'm always uncovering new layers of history, and your insight might just shape a future episode. One thing is certain, these masterpieces may hang in museums, but they live on in our minds, sparking debates, emotions, and questions that never quite fade. So if you want to keep unraveling the hidden stories behind history's greatest artworks, subscribe and hit the like button. It's the best way to help Galleria grow and bring more stories to light,